Hello everyone and welcome to this video where we're going to be setting a maximum speed controller in the locomotive so you can follow along the build process, the procedure for microcontroller design if you're not familiar, or just watch if you're interested. Now this does come because I have a lot planned for my locomotive and train line. On my YouTube channel, under community, I actually had a poll and over 400 people voted. I asked what is the next locomotive build you want to see. I had double-ended, so you could control it from both front and rear. Shunter, so a very small kind of moving train around the dockyard or rail yard. Cabless has a booster, so it just has a motor and you just kind of pair it on for more power. Or long hood forward. This is kind of your classic, locomotive from over 100 years ago when you have the long nose and the cab in the rear. So I had various people voting, and at one point they were all tied. And of course here you have it. So right now Shunter won. So I will be building a Shunter, but honestly I'll probably be building all of these. So stay tuned for all that. Thank you for voting, and I love to see the engagement. One of the things that is now completed and gonna come to the workshop soon here is the drop deck trailer. So now you can lower the platform. There's an unlock button, so it works nicely, and of course you can drive a vehicle up onto the deck. So this is quite good and useful. And this one I didn't really showcase much before, but I've added a boxcar. Now of course if you have a long train and you want to walk across it, I do have the roof access. But over here on both sides you got nice sliding doors, and you have big access, or a lot of entryways, a lot of ladders to get up into here. And of course when the doors are open the lights are on, so that's nice too. And what you also have in here are the emergency stop buttons as well, so they're actually inside this train rather than being on the outside. So now for the task at hand. People asked for a speed limiter. This is going to be quite simple, I suppose, but regardless, I think interesting for those watching, just to give us something that is a little more or easily controllable. So we'll put it with a keypad here, and it will require a simple microcontroller. So with the keypad, just fix the roof up here. And then we'll put in the empty microcontroller. That'll be our starting point. There's a few things we need to have. So there's going to be the keypad, which is going to be a number input. There will be the speed sensor input. So we have the keypad, the speed sensor, and then we'll need to be a throttle output. So it'll be a number output, throttle output, and for that same reason we'll need to have a throttle input to kind of take the path. So throttle input. Now there could be an on and off button, but I'm going to show you something that I'm going to do instead. So with this in mind for kind of our starting point, we could put it in order on the microcontroller, and it'll consist of this. So right now throttle and throttle are together. The speed sensor really is what we're interested in. Now the keypad is what we're going to put in a number. So that number is going to be the speed we're trying to limit the train. We don't want to go over 60 kilometers an hour. We put 60, that type of thing. Now I know the train itself is dual, what do you call it? Like you could switch between kilometers an hour, miles per hour, but we're just going to have to pick one unit and stay with it, because I don't want to have, get too complicated with this, with settings and changing the unit and stuff. So it'll just be kilometers per hour, but that's going to be here. Now remember how I said there will not be an on and off button? It's because we're going to be using a threshold gate. So the threshold gate will allow us to not activate this system if it is less than a certain speed. So in theory, we could set it to like 20 kilometers an hour is the minimum or something like that. But I'm quite interested to see if that works. So in that case, if it is 0, so if it is anywhere in the range of 1 to 9,999, then we are actually going to have this system activated, meaning it is not activated when our throttle goes simply to our throttle. So in this case, throttle, this system's off. It is not between this range. If we do have it between this range, we're now setting a maximum speed, keep in mind, and that is now going to be dependent on this speed sensor. So we're going to have to compare the speed we've set it to with the speed sensor itself. Now, the speed coming from the speed sensor is in meters per second. So I am going to convert it to kilometers an hour. We're going to be using kilometers per hour in this microcontroller. There's not going to be an option for miles per hour. So that it's one type of unit we're using. And it will be 3.6. So 3.6. Now this is in kilometers an hour. So with that done, we now have to consider that the speed sensor in kilometers per hour is now being compared with the throttle coming from the being compared to the keypad number and determining what goes on with the throttle. The easiest and most simple way to do this would be to say, and we have now with the numerical greater than, okay, if the speed sensor is greater than the value we've set on the keypad, then we need it to not give it any more throttle. So in that case, we will have this gate attached to the numerical switch box. So if our speed sensor is greater than the number coming from the keypad, we don't want any throttle. So what we'll do is we'll attach the throttle to the off node here, but nothing on the on. So if it is greater, then our throttle is absolutely 0. And in theory, this would now go to here. But you see, you can't have both of these systems at once. So we'll attach it instead to on and out through here. So what happens is if we now have the keypad set to something other than 0, it goes on. And now it actually receives throttle. It's off. In this case, unless it goes past what we've determined as our maximum speed, then it'll just cut out and put it onto 0. Let's give it a shot and see if this worked. But first, everything has to get connected. So the throttle itself is what we'll have to find where those are, but the speed sensor, I usually put it somewhere in the front of the train or kind of in an obvious spot. So there's our speed sensor and our keypad now we have up here. On the keypad itself, I'm going to say max speed set, and then 0 is off. So 0 is off. That's easy to remember. Make sure it's connected to the electric, which it is clearly not right now. So we'll have it on electrical systems, and that's the value going into here. So the throttle now in my specific trains comes from a number of things. Now, do we want the generators to slow down? No, we don't. We only want to affect the throttle going into these electric motors. So the motors are the only thing we want to turn down or lower. The generator can keep on humming at full power. So I found it here. We could take this throttle chain, put it on the throttle, and then see where this one previously went, which is right into this clamp, and put that into that throttle. So in this case, what should happen is it should let us control it normally, fully normal, without any difference. Obviously, you have to turn the brake down. So now we should have that speed of 160 that we kind of get as our top speed. But now, if I set, let's say, 60 here, let's see what's going to happen. So we're dropping in speed, and now we're going to pick up speed. It kind of shoots it up. So it doesn't quite keep us at that 60 mark, but it does push that throttle. We get like a momentary burst of speed, but you can't really tell. Like, it's not too bad. I wouldn't say if you're standing here, you're not like being thrown around. It's just kind of feathering the controls. If anything, this speed thing, the speed sensor here is quite strong, so it is pushing us or propelling us forward, but also we don't have any load. So in the case where we had trailers behind us, that will, you know, play a part. Now what if we put 20? The slower the speed, I believe it's going to be even harder to keep up. Like, it'll probably fly up to a higher number in that case. You'll see. So it's going to hit that 20 mark and shoot us up. Well, it shot us to 30. But again, this is not too terrible, just like looking at it like this. And actually, funny enough, we could almost catch up to this. So that it doesn't look from the outside like it's kind of getting a push, so it just works. It's just kind of limiting our speed by pulsing that throttle. Now, of course, you can turn down your throttle here and keep up with this. That's up to you. I mean, you could do whatever you want, but this is the max speed no matter what. So we could go up to like that 130 now, and let's see how that works. So we're going to fly up to 130, and we still kind of jump around there. But anyway, simple system, lets you set the max top speed. It does fly up a little bit, so it doesn't quite work. Now, I've noticed that it goes 10 up. So in the microcontroller here, I actually could jerry-rig something where I take the keypad value, have a function, set it to be 10 kilometers less than what we're trying to accomplish here. But keep in mind that this is what's happening when the thing is not loaded. We're going to see how it functions when it's loaded. So here I've loaded the brick behind us, and we'll turn on the displays, turn on the locomotive, throttle up, and let's set it now to 50 kilometers an hour. So let's see what happens at 50. See? It's kind of jumping around that 50 mark quite nicely now. Let's see what happens if we turn it down even less. Let's go to 20. Now this only works in kilometers an hour, so we'll have to set something. Obviously, if you change it to miles per hour, that is, you know, a different thing altogether. So you're going to get something like that. It does fluctuate, it does jump a little, but you can set the max speed. So I'm quite happy with this system now. Like I said in here, what I may want to do is set this to now be max speed set kilometers per hour. And then 0 is off. And actually, it's funny that now our shunting speed, well, AP throttle is now able to be set independently, which we don't really need, and we have the shunting speed, which we also don't need because we now have, you know, a working controller. So all that becomes more or less irrelevant. Like this shunting throttle, we don't really need that. You have this one here. So do I want to leave it? Do I want to remove it? Let's see. What is this currently attached to? It goes into shunting speed control, which goes into my massive train MC. The shunting throttle we do need because it works with my microcontroller and it actually sets the train into a certain power, but we don't need the autopilot throttle anymore. That really doesn't serve any purpose other than, you know, it's for the autopilot, sure, but you could also now set your speed here. Anyways, that autopilot works at full 1 every single time. So this way you can regulate your speed with this microcontroller here. Now I just went back to a previous version, so we'll fix that. Max speed set, kilometers per hour, it's off, and then we'll be able to do that. Now shunting, like I said, stays, so this should work. If we hop in, I believe with the power on and shunting mode enabled, we'll set it to channel 1, so toggle frequency, done. Okay, and 5 and 6 gives us the go ahead. Now right now we're set to 0.1 of our throttle as far as the shunting's concerned, but if I go ahead and put this to 0.9 but then set my speed, let's say, to 15 or 20, let's see what happens. So in this case, so it still regulates it to that speed, that 20 speed, irrelevant of what is set on the shunting throttle. The throttle still does play a factor because it gives us the right amount of throttle, so if we are pushing a heavy load, you'll want higher throttle on that shunting anyways. But this is just what sets the max speed there. So we could turn off that mode now, and let's try with the autopilot. So we turn on autopilot, let's make it go over here. Now we don't have the button to control its throttle, but let's see what happens. So I can engage the autopilot. Oh, and the reason why this is happening is because we still have it on shunting. Oh no, our brakes all the way on. So shunting mode overrides the brakes, but autopilot we still have to have the brakes set. And in this case we are hitting that kind of 20 threshold. Now I do believe we could use a PID for this whole system, but this does work overall. And I personally really think the key here is how it performs when it's loaded. So you can see when it's loaded, it doesn't really stray much more than like plus minus 1 of that value that we want. Now I did see the wheel slip flash because we're kind of putting power down really quickly there. But you can see we're getting that 60 and it is keeping us good. So I'm happy with this system. We'll see if it works in the long run. But I do believe that something like this is useful and good to have, so you don't end up flying through the train tracks and whatever. So anyway, there you have it, a very simple microcontroller. Not only that, you got an update for the train stuff to come, so that's good. I love making these videos, I love talking about trains. Stay tuned for all the other content and creations I've planned, and until next time, happy Stormworksing everyone.